discovered 10 spine-chilling videos revealing sinister glitches in our cursed reality Unexplained. Jenna's heart raced as she sat alone in her dimly lit living room, the shadows of the suburban night creeping closer. The chill of the chilly evening sat heavy on her shoulders. Her phone buzzed loudly, breaking the stifling silence, and she glanced at it. A viral thread, filled with bizarre occurrences, drew her in like a moth to a flame. Images of flickering lights, figures darting just out of frame, and distorted reflections that twisted the mundane into the macabre. As a single mom working night shifts, exhaustion weighed her down, but she couldn't resist. She pressed play on the next video, and her blood ran cold. There on the screen stood Mr. Thompson, her elderly neighbor, unnervingly smirking and glancing over his shoulder, just outside her home. The scene felt stolen from a horror movie. Suddenly, the shadows in her living room deepened. It seemed the walls of their cozy Maplewood home absorbed menace, an energy that turned the air thick with dread. After tucking her children in tight, Jenna tried to settle herself. But just as she thought she was safe, the lights flickered. Not a simple nuisance, this felt deliberate, like a warning or worse, a beckoning. Her restless thoughts were interrupted by a soft voice breaking the silence. "Mom, I saw him." He back. Lily's dreamlike innocence now felt tainted by something dark. Jenna shuddered, forcing laughter to alleviate the rising tension. Children's imaginations could run wild. But deep down, a shiver crept down her spine, knitting unease into every fiber of her being. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Every night brought new strange sensations. The locks clicked softly despite her not touching them. The shadows in the corners grew longer, more animate. Whispers echoed through the hallways. Fear planted its roots deep in Jenna's heart, like a vine that wouldn't die. The children sensed it too, a darkness seeping into their safe space, and now they'd found it in the corners of their eyes. The whispers of rumors danced through the neighborhood, as whispers of missing children wafted through Maplewood air. Panic wrapped around her like an icy shroud, as she noticed the furtive glances exchanged by her neighbors. How could they be so casual while discussing what had happened? Their eyes betrayed secrets they refused to voice, preferring silence over the truth. As the townsfolk's hushed tones melted into her psyche, an urgency coursed through Jenna. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was chasing them. The weight of the urban legend was almost palpable. One evening, as shadows embraced the streets, and she found herself filling with resolve, Jenna steeled her heart. Who was this figure, and what was its connection to the eerie atmosphere that weighed on their home? But just as she began to connect the dots, the power cut out abruptly, plunging her world into darkness, a suffocating cloak closing around her family. Heart racing, breath quickening, she heard the faint sound of soft footsteps creeping down the hallway. "Mom! He's here!" Ben's terrified whisper slithered through the dark, and in that moment, Jenna understood with bone-deep clarity. Some nightmares don't stay in dreams. Sometimes, they bleed into reality, and sometimes, they come knocking at your door. Jenna's heart pounded in the darkness, matched only by the soft, rhythmic thud of footsteps echoing down the hall. Time stretched. Every second felt like an eternity. She felt her children huddle closer to her, small bodies trembling against her, their breaths shallow and urgent. Who was out there? "Stay quiet," Jenna urged, her voice barely above a whisper, laced with fear. An instinct to protect her children snapped her into a state of alertness. She tried to focus, her mind racing through every possible explanation. Was it just her imagination playing tricks? Or was it true the legend of the figure that haunted Maplewood returning to ravage her home? The footsteps stopped abruptly, as if whoever was out there sensed her presence. Jenna felt her pulse quicken. She needed to do something. "I'm going to check it out," she said, forcing confidence into her shaking voice. She gripped the flashlight that lay near the couch, its beam flickering as if sharing in her dread. The light cast eerie shadows that danced across the room, mirroring her rising fear. "Stay here. Don't move." With every step toward the hallway, Jenna's breath grew heavier. The darkness felt alive, pressing against her, enveloping her in cold uncertainty. She swallowed thickly, inching toward the source of the sound. Each footfall resonated through the silence, amplifying the tension in the air. And then everything froze. The unmistakable sound of a child's laughter floated eerily from the shadows, high-pitched and playful. Jenna's stomach twisted into knots. That was not the laughter of her children. It was distorted, echoing with an edge that sent chills racing down her spine. "Ben? Lily?" she called, fighting the quiver in her voice. Silence answered her, thick and suffocating. The laughter continued, a memory twisted into a cruel mockery. It slithered around her, wrapping her with dread as her instincts screamed at her to retreat, to protect her children. Her grip on the flashlight tightened, thumb flicking the side button. A beam cut through the darkness only to be swallowed whole. The beam flickered and dimmed, the batteries losing their life just when she needed it most. Panic surged as she felt her grip loosen, fingers slipping in her sweat. But in that dim beam of light, she saw him, a figure, cloaked in shadows, standing at the end of the hallway. A silhouette barely defined, but unmistakably there, watching her. The smirk, twisted and malicious, flickered across his face like a broken television screen. She knew that face. Mr. Thompson, the man she'd brushed off as harmless. Jenna's heart raced, pounding in sync with the relentless thrum of fear. The laughter crescendoed into a cacophony around her, growing closer, surrounding her with phantom children taunting her. She couldn't breathe. Desperation clawed at her, as she turned to run back to her kids just as the darkness surged. A chilling wind enveloped her, and she stumbled, falling onto her knees. Behind her, the laughter rose into shrieks, echoing a maddened chorus that shattered the remaining bubbles of safety in her mind. "Lily! Ben!" Jenna cried out, her voice filled with sheer panic. She scrambled to her feet, fighting through shadowy tendrils that seemed to wrap around her, pulling her back. Her heart thundered in her ears as she sprinted towards the living room, breathless. What if he had taken them? What if the legends held truth? The thought spiraled as dread coiled tightly in her stomach. She burst into the room. The lamp flickered back to life, revealing an empty space. Her children were gone. Jenna's world tilted terrifyingly off its axis as she looked frantically for any signs of them. Could her worst fears have come true? Is this what those whispers meant? The truth seemed to echo through the empty house, drenching her in despair. And then it came, another sound, low and steady. The rhythmic tapping, almost like fingers dancing on glass, emanated from the kitchen. Jenna felt her chest constrict, a visceral chill running down her spine. Was it over? Or just the beginning? As she stood, frozen, dread wrapping around her heart, she sensed that whatever sought her children was not done yet. "Mom!" A faint voice called from nowhere. The air grew thick with suspense. What awaited her at the end of that whisper? Jenna's breath hitched as the whisper cut through the heavy silence like a knife. "Mom!" The voice was soft but desperate, laced with a haunting familiarity that sent icy tendrils wrapping around her heart. It felt like Ben, but the doubt gnawed at her. What if it was another cruel trick? Every instinct screamed for her to flee, to barricade herself from whatever awaited in the shadows. But she couldn't abandon the voice. She had to find her children. Mustering every ounce of courage, She edged closer to the kitchen doorway, the tapping sound growing clearer, like a sinister countdown echoing her despair. With a shaky hand, Jenna reached for the doorframe, clinging to it as if it were her lifeline. Steeling herself, she stepped over the threshold, the cold tiles sending shivers up her legs. The kitchen was dark, illuminated only by the soft gleam of the moon filtering through the window. Crumbs of light bounced across the checkered floor, enough to glimpse the space, but not enough to dispel the encroaching fear. "Ben!" "Lily!" She called again, her voice trembling, mixing with the faint tapping sound a rhythm that quickened, almost as if it were anticipating her next move. The noise originated from the pantry, a door slightly ajar. Jenna squinted into the darkness of the pantry. Clenching her teeth, she moved closer, each cautious step accentuating her dread. The tapping intensified, fingers drumming against wood, more urgent now. "Mom!" Came a whimper again, but it no longer sounded like her child. It was distorted, laced with something vicious and wrong. She hesitated, dread pooling in her chest, but memories of their laughs flooded through her. Jenna pushed the door open wider, heart pounding like a drumbeat. As it swung, the tapping stopped, leaving her in grave silence. Inside, the shadows loomed, twisting into shapes that seemed to breathe. The shelves were cluttered with canned goods and forgotten items, things she had intended to donate. But now, they felt like a veil hiding her nightmares. "Lily, Ben?" she whispered, her voice fragile. Nothing. The stillness was suffocating. She turned away from the pantry, but then noticed a shadow flicker at the window. Her heart raced as she stepped back, fear gripping her throat. Outside, the moonlight revealed a figure standing in her yard. It was Mr. Thompson, staring up at her, still cloaked in darkness. The sickening smirk plastered on his face was illuminated for just a second, sending a gush of ice through her veins. "Your children are lost, Jenna," he called out, his voice slithering through the air. "They need your help." "No!" she screamed, panic igniting in her blood. The figure seemed to melt back into the night, but she felt something shift around her, as if the darkness had teeth, eager to consume. Jenna stumbled backward into the kitchen, eyes darting around for anything that could defend her. The refrigerator hummed ominously behind her now, casting shadows that morphed with each flicker of light. Just then, a soft thud echoed from behind her. She turned slowly, breath lodged in her throat. The pantry door swung fully open, revealing nothing but pitch blackness inside. Her heart raced as she felt the whisper of cold air brush past her neck. The tapping resumed, more frantic, punctuated by a new sound, a sigh, filled with sorrow and longing. "Mom, help us!" Jenna turned toward the sound, quaking in terror. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and her flashlight dimmed to a faint glow, casting eerie shadows on the walls. She backed away, desperate to escape the growing sense of dread that pressed in from all sides. What if this was a trick? What if the children still lurked in the shadows, calling her to darkness? Panic threatened to consume her, but she couldn't let fear win. "Mom!" The voice again, more distinct and filled with despair. Suddenly, the walls of the kitchen trembled as if the house itself was alive, yearning for something only it understood. Jenna felt her skin crawl, instincts urging her to run before it was too late. What haunting truth awaited her once she crossed that threshold into darkness? A searing pain shot through her mind as Jenna teetered between flight and resolve. The darkness beckoned, treacherous tendrils curling around her legs, urging her forward into the pantry's inky depths. Her heart thundered in her chest, drowning out the frantic tapping, which transformed into an echo of her children's laughter twisted grotesquely into wails. A fleeting memory danced on the edge of her consciousness, a painting of their innocent smile shattered by the sinister weight of the moment. "Mom!" The voice was urgent, but not reassured. It felt like it was fighting against something. "Why can't I see you?" she cried, her hands trembling as she searched the shadows for movement. Something behind her shifted. She turned sharply, half expecting to see Mr. Thompson looming again, but only empty space greeted her. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, bathing the room in strobing flashes of fleeting white. In those moments, she caught glimpses of chaos all around her, the looming shadows, the pantry door yawning wider, as if revealing a hungry mouth. With every flicker, the wall shuddered, and the comforting structure of her home began to feel like a coffin prison. Jenna stumbled to the kitchen counter, gripping it to steady herself. "Lily." "Ben!" she called out again, desperation lacing her voice. "Mom," it was a whisper, ghostly and drawn. From the pantry came an unsettling rustling sound, like the clattering of cans, followed by silence, a heavy, oppressive silence that wrapped around her. She could feel her sanity fraying, each second stretching longer than the last. Might they be trapped, caught in a nightmare of their own? It was too much to bear. The refrigerator's hum morphed into a howl, sharp and menacing. Jenna's pulse raced. She could feel something unseen, a force pressing down on her chest, stifling her breath. She blurted out the only prayer she could think of, a plea for her children. "Please, wherever you are, just come back. I can help you." "Jenna," the voice was now layered, filled with echoes of anguish. It came from the pantry. Against every instinct, she stepped toward the door, the creaking with a sinister invitation beckoning her. With movement that felt both empowered and petrified, she reached for the handle, her fingers sliding over cool metal as she pulled the door open wider. The pantry felt like another world, each shadow swirling with regret, twisted fates clinging to the air with a suffocating grip. And then she saw it. A figure crouched beneath the lowest shelf, hidden in darkness, a small body wrapped in shadows. "Mom," the figure whispered, now less of a call and more of a haunting echo. Her heart soared and plummeted in the same breath. "Lily, is that you?" The figure lifted its head, and Jenna's breath caught when she saw the face was her daughter's. The eyes were glassy, empty, and it was not just one face, but multitudes swirling into a singular haunting visage. "Help us," they chorused, a cacophony of voices scraping underneath her skin. Jenna stepped back instinctively, stumbling against the counter. "No, no! Get away!" She turned, her legs propelling her toward the kitchen exit, but time slowed. Chills licked at her spine. "Help us before it's too late," the whisper echoed around her, wrapping her in darkness. A door creaked open at the far end of the kitchen, revealing a shadow pulsing beneath it, waiting. Jenna felt the house pulse, alive and breathing, urging her forward into the unspeakable darkness. Fear clawed at her, but desperation pushed her onward. Her hand quaked, hovering in front of the open door. Would she find her children? Or was this all part of an elaborate deception meant to trap her forever? A gasp echoed in her throat, and she crossed the threshold, heart pounding as she stepped into the unknown. What awaited her on the other side? The moment Jenna stepped through the door, a wave of frigid air crashed over her, setting her skin ablaze with goosebumps. The light from the kitchen faded behind her like a dying ember, leaving her surrounded by the oppressive murk. Instinct screamed at her to retreat, but her heartbeat drummed a different rhythm, the urgent call of her children echoing through the shadows. She stumbled forward, eyes straining to discern shapes in the gloom. The air felt thick, almost gelatinous, as if it could absorb her screams before they ever left her lips. Each step brought an unsettling crunch underfoot, something brittle and crumbling, as if she walked on shards of glass, splintered memories of what used to be. "Lily? Ben?" she whispered, her voice barely piercing the suffocating silence. A faint flicker, only a shimmer of light, danced beyond a tangle of dark shells, illuminating the outline of something hunched and wrong. The air hummed with an electric tension, palpable and terrifying. Was it alive? Fresh panic surged. She took a hesitant step, the shadows seething like a living entity around her. Moaned the voice, strained and slurred, carried to her like a distant call on the wind. It wasn't clear. It was garbled. Not the joyful, ringing laughter of her children, but an echo of distorted familiarity. "Where are you?" she pleaded, her voice cracking. As Jenna rounded the shelf, the awful sight came into view. It was another figure, smaller than the first, but instead of facial features, there was a smooth surface, the skin like polished marble. It seemed to stare, unblinking, its eyes voids of deep despair. She pressed her hand to her mouth. A horrible realization gripped her. It was not her child. It could never be. The spectral thing beckoned with long, spidery fingers curling in invitation. "Help us before we fade," it rasped. "No!" Jenna cried, battling the rising tide of fear. She took a step back, but the pantry loomed larger, the very walls closing in around her, shaking her sense of direction. The far wall buckled, revealing an aperture where light flickered chaotically like wild flames. From it, a chorus of voices spilled out, a collective howling of fear and anguish from the deep. Shadows poured out like smoke, clawed hands grasping at her ankles, trying to pull her into their dimension. "Mom! I'm here!" The urgency in her children's voices cut through the din, sharper than the whispered wails from the shadows. "Stay there!" she shouted, bracing against the malignant force surrounding her. Her heart thundered louder than ever, threatening to break free from her chest. A violent tremor rumbled beneath her. The shadows writhed, shifting almost to form faces she recognized, twisted visages of her neighbors. What had this place done to them? She felt a horrific bond forming, each touch of the darkness whispering her name, sliding tendrils of despair deeper into her mind. "Jenna," the chorus creaked again, thick with malice. "You can join us." In that moment, she understood. This place had a hunger, a never-ending desire to consume. She had to fight. She had to focus on her children, on getting to them. I want to let you take me." Gathering her resolve, Jenna took a deep breath and charged toward the light flickering in the distance, her only chance to escape the palpable dread closing in from every side. As she sprinted, the shadows screamed, a cacophony erupting, overlapping with the cries of the lost. Would she reach her children before the darkness took her? The light pulsed fiercely, and Jenna felt the wall of despair behind her buckle as she raced desperately ahead. What if it was a trap, waiting to ensnare her at the last moment? Jenna burst through the doorway and hurtled into the open space beyond. The light enveloped her like a warm blanket, contrasting sharply with the bitter chill that clung to her skin. But she didn't hesitate. Her children called out again, voices piercing through the chaos. "Mom! Please!" She spun around, frantic, but the shadows behind her clawed at the edges of the light. The flickering radiance from within the room pulsed, a heart in the darkness that wanted to betray her. Those whispers, those anguished cries were relentless, echoing and ricocheting off the walls. They seeped into her very soul, igniting the panic within her anew. "Mom, we need you." It was Lily's voice, clear and desperate. "Lily!" Jenna gasped, looking for any sign of her daughter amidst the encroaching dread. The warmth of the light felt like a fragile barrier, unable to hold back the onslaught of sorrow closing in behind her. She took a shaky step closer to the flickering light, where the shadows held no sway. But when she turned, her breath caught in her throat. The pantry had shifted, expanding as if it were mocking her. The entrance yawned wider, revealing a depth that twisted and warped, stretching into something unimaginable. "Jenna!" This time, it was Ben. He sounded so close yet so hopelessly far away. "Hold on. I'm coming." Her voice was a frantic cry, a desperate plea echoing in the dim enclosure. The overhead lights pulsed erratically, illuminating grotesque figures slumped against the walls, their features vaguely human, but obscured by shadows and flickering light. Was that her neighbor, Mrs. Henderson? The old man from across the street? They were trapped here too. A sudden thought gripped her. If they were here, could the children be too? What if they were ensnared somewhere in that endless darkness, lost forever like the rest? Jenna, a voice, soft and mocking, slithered through the air. Familiar yet twisted. It came from the pantry, escaping Ma, a seductive whisper that promised safety, comfort, and an end to her fright. "No!" she screamed, choking back a rising sense of despair. "You're not my children." She clenched her fists, staring into the void, but its allure shimmered, urging her to step forward and trust. Each second was an eternity, her pulse racing. Then she saw them, a flicker of movement. Two tiny figures, lost within the darkness of the pantry, shadows caught in the clutches of a twisted embrace. Lily and Ben stood just behind the threshold, eyes wide with terror, as if 1,000 fears lived behind them. The space pulsated with a sickening energy, drawing the children deeper into its clutches. "Mom!" they cried again, but this time it felt like a suicide note, begging for release from a death they hadn't chosen. "Stay back!" Jenna shouted, hoping against hope that the words would anchor them. "I will find you. Fight it!" The darkness recoiled as though her resistance surprised it, a momentary pause in the relentless tide. Jenna took a step toward the light, but the shadows surged with fury, blasting cold air against her skin. It was a wave of darkness, slapping her back, and she stumbled, almost losing her footing. "Join us!" the chorus thinned, wrapping around her, squeezing her lungs. It made her head spin with every breath. "You can save them, be whole again." Jenna shook her head vehemently, biting back tears. She couldn't succumb to this madness. Trapped in a nightmare, she needed to rally her strength. With one last fresh breath, she squared her shoulders and lunged the only way forward. But then, the light flickered violently, and for one terrifying moment, it dimmed to darkness. Her heart plummeted. A glimpse of twisted faces swam in her vision, as whispers grew louder, a cacophony that drowned everything else. "Join us, Jenna!" As the darkness mocked her with its seductive pull, she felt the weight of her choice grow heavier. Could she truly save her children without succumbing to the hunger of the shadows? Jenna lunged forward, desperate to breach the light, but the shadows enveloped her like a thick fog, dragging at her limbs. It was as if the very air was alive, the whispers swirling around her, growing more insistent, more desperate. She could feel their icy fingers tracing her spine, scraping away her resolve. "Mom!" The voices of Lily and Ben pierced through the gloom, like a beacon. Their faces materialized momentarily in her mind, but they faded again, lost in the darkness. She clenched her teeth, steeling herself against the growing fear. No, no! This was not the end. With every step she took toward the pantry, she felt the ground beneath her begin to tremble. Shadows wavered and danced, taking on forms that twisted and contorted. Was that her neighbor, or was it a mere specter? The faces were gaunt, their mouths stretching into ghastly grins. They were hungry. They wanted more souls, more lives. "Help us!" The children's cries turned into silent screams, their eyes wide and pleading as if they could see the depths of her torment. Each moment they were trapped felt like shards of glass slicing at her heart. She steadied her breath, forcing herself to stay focused. "I'll get you out." Her own voice sounded foreign, strained, but she needed to speak, needed to anchor herself in this fray. Her mind flashed back to the drawings in Lily's sketchbook, the stick figures engulfed by darkness, a chilling reflection of what lay ahead. Her stomach knotted. Those images had been more than just drawings. They were warnings. Somehow, she had ignored them, but now they loomed ominously above her like a storm cloud about to burst. Jenna took another step, the light flickering again, its pulse becoming frantic. The shadows answered in kind, growing bolder. The pantry's entrance lunged wider, a dark vortex beckoning her closer. She felt it call her name, mocking her attempts to fight back. "Come to us, shut up!" she yelled. Her voice pierced the air, momentarily halting the encroaching tide. "I will not give in to you." But the shadows seemed to laugh, a sickening, hollow sound that echoed in the pantry. The grotesque figures pressed against the walls appeared to advance and retreat, like waves crashing and receding. Each flicker of light revealed smaller glimpses of distorted faces, their mouths curling into sinister smiles. "Join us, Jenna. We will be one." The voices echoed, and she felt their combined longing seep into her veins, tempting her to surrender. "No!" she screamed, a primal howl of defiance. It reverberated through the empty space, shaking the darkness momentarily. Then she saw it. Behind the swirling shadows, the children were still there, rooted against the edge of that infinite void. They stood trembling, but a spark of determination flashed in their wide eyes. "Mom, we believe in you." Suddenly, courage surged within her, a furious flame that battled against the shadow's chilling grip. She took another step, then another, barreling toward the pantry, hope and terror quilling together in her chest. Each move felt like a battle against a gusty wind, but the sight of her children anchored her. "Fight it!" She reached out, hands trembling as she grasped at their shadowed figures. But just as she believed she could pull them free, the darkness surged, and the ground beneath her shifted, sucking her in. She felt the weight of thousands of voices attempting to drag her down, pulling away from the warmth and safeness she so desperately sought. "Give in," they howled. But Jenna widened her stance, hands outstretched as she shouted, "I won't let you take my kids. This ends now." Then, suddenly, an electrifying silence enveloped her, as if the very air held its breath. Just when it seemed the shadows would swallow her whole, the pantry quivered and began to collapse in on itself, forcing the light to explode forth. Jenna fought with every ounce of strength she had as brilliant light cracked through the darkness, oscillating like the very heartbeat of hope. But then came the chilling realization that the shadows were fighting back, clawing at the edges of her vision. "Mom?" the children shouted, fear clawing at their voices. Jenna plunged deeper, her body screaming in protest against the pulse of shadow pressing in. But she couldn't back down. She couldn't surrender now. As the darkness clawed at her clothes, clawed at her sanity, something cold and sharp whispered in her ear, "It won't be this easy." Jenna, a blinding light erupted, and she felt herself being pulled backward, like the strings of a marionette caught in a master's hands. And as she twisted, she realized with horror that the pantry was not just a portal but a graveyard of lost souls. And there, in the dim light of chaos, she began to understand the true nature of the darkness that threatened to consume them all. What sacrifices would she be forced to make? Would she lose them to save herself? As the shadows roared in defiance, Jenna clung to the flicker of hope for her children, hope for freedom. But ahead, darkness was waiting, filled with ancient hungry eyes, and a shiver of fear crept up her spine. Would she discover the way to save her family, or would they all become fodder for the darkness? The light surged forward in a blinding wave, pushing back the shadows that clawed at Jenna. It shimmered like liquid silver, illuminating the grotesque features of the figures that lurked just beyond the threshold. Those faces, they were familiar. Faces from her past, twisted and warped, their eyes reflecting a hunger that shook her to her core. "Mom!" Lily's voice sliced through the tension, a piercing plea that shattered the brief silence. "Stay with me," Jenna cried out, her heart pounding against her ribcage like a frantic drum. She couldn't lose them. Not now. Not to this. As the swirling darkness recoiled slightly, Jenna seized the moment, forcing herself to plunge forward into the radiant glow. The shadows hissed in agitation, lashing out with tendrils of black mist that coiled toward her, seeking to ensnare her again. "No!" she gasped, feeling one of the cold tendrils wrap around her ankle. Panic ignited within her, a fire that refused to be snuffed out. She yanked her foot free with a desperate lunge, feeling a sharp tug at her mind as she crossed the threshold into the light. Suddenly, the pantry door slammed shut behind her, plunging the room into a tense silence. Breathless, Jenna spun around, her heart racing. The children were gone. Just as quickly as they had appeared, they vanished into thin air, leaving her alone in another dimension of terror. "Mom!" echoed around her, then it faded, replaced by a suffocating stillness that dripped with a deepening dread. "Lily? Ben?" Jenna whispered, her voice trembling. She was enveloped in a thick darkness, although the pantry door now appeared like an impenetrable wall, shimmering slightly, as if it were itself alive. The air grew cold, heavy with an unspoken threat. The shadows began to stretch out from the crevices in the room, their shapes undulating like snakes hungry for prey, and they congregated into a thick mass of swirling darkness at her feet. Jenna's pulse quickened. She was not just facing ethereal monsters. She was standing on ground that felt alive, breathing, pulsing with unseen energy. Every instinct screamed at her to escape, but she felt rooted a puppet in a dance of dread. "Come to us, Jenna," the whispers began anew, taunting and sweet, promising the reunion she craved. The voices rose and fell, like a chant echoing from the void. "Please!" "No!" she shouted. The sound bounced off the walls, ricocheting into the shadows. Fear mixed with determination. "I want to give in." But doubt slithered in, coiling around her heart. What if the children were lost forever? Would she really be able to fight this? The shadows seemed to respond to her hesitation, growing denser, the whispers escalating, filling her mind with chaotic thoughts. "This is the price of your love, Jenna." It was a voice she recognized, a deep, haunting echo straight from her buried memories. Her father's face drifted into her vision, locked in a silent scream, half formed in the murkiness. A chill washed over her, terror gripping her heart. Was this a game? Suddenly, something flickered to life beside her, the faint, cool brush of little hands reaching for her through the shadows. "Mom, help us!" The desperate cries of her children sliced through her panic, snapping her back to reality. "Stay strong," she shouted as she reached out, fingers grazing against the darkness. For a heartbeat, everything stopped. Then, the shadows convulsed, thrumming like the strings of a bow taut to release. She could feel their pulse vibrating in her bones. "Give us strength," Jenna declared, channeling her love into the starlight they once shared, desperate to manifest that love into physical power. With every ounce of will, she pulled herself closer to the glimmer of hope she felt between the shadows. It resonated beneath the pressure of despair. Could love conquer this shadowy prison? As she centered on that fragile light, she felt it answer, growing stronger, shimmering defiantly against all odds. But just as hope surged, darkness flared, and a screech echoed through the chamber like nails on a chalkboard. "Join us," the shadows hissed, weaving together, blocking her path. The light flickered dangerously, and as Jenna prepared to confront the terror, she questioned what her next move would be. In a moment teetering on the edge of despair, could she really fracture the hold of the shadows? Or was she just another lost soul doomed to join their endless whispers in the dark? "Mom?" a voice called weakly, and it pierced her heart. The shadows swelled ominously. The shadows twirled, stretching and writhing like grotesque marionettes, each more twisted than the last. Jenna's heart thudded against her chest, echoing loudly in the suffocating hush. The voice was soft yet haunting, drawing her attention, pulling her deeper into the shadows. "Mom, please!" "I'm scared." That voice, it was Lily, unmistakably. The tenderness mixed with terror sent an electric shock of pain through Jenna. Fear crashed in waves, violently hitting her mind. The glimmer of light danced just out of reach, flickering like a dying star against the oppressive darkness. "I'm coming!" she screamed, her voice cracking, throttled by sheer desperation. She lunged toward the echoes, her hands brushing against the cold, slithering shapes that loomed around her. With each clawing touch, she felt the shadows gnaw at her resolve, tugging incessantly at her sanity. "Embrace it," they whispered, a chorus of cicadas singing sorrow in her ear. Join us, could she? The thought sowed seeds of doubt. The pain cries rattled in her mind, but as she looked around, the memories surged like a crashing tide. Their laughter back in the park, Ben chasing bubbles, Lily's bright smile. They were magic, and she was their keeper. Get away from her, Jenna roared, drawing strength from that love, manifesting it as fire within her veins. The darkness recoiled, momentarily faltering. Jenna seized the opportunity, thrusting her hand deep into the light's embrace. With a flash, she was engulfed in warmth, an illumination of hope that felt almost real. "I won't leave you. I promise." But the shadows, stung by her defiance, twisted menacingly. They morphed, coiling around the pantry walls, creating shapes, laughing, mocking. Faces of those she once loved appeared, twisted into masks of pain and hatred. Her father's visage emerged, framed by the shadows that held nothing but contempt. "Please, Dad," Jenna begged, though any warmth faded, leaving only chilling silence. His light-filled eyes betrayed nothing but wrath. They were playing a game, and she was losing. In the haze of fear, another voice reached out, this time stronger, more determined. "Mom, we're not lost. Fight!" It was Ben. She felt the power of his spirit, his faith. "Hold on," Jenna begged, the warmth of his conviction filtering through her. With a primal scream, she surged forward, whipping her arms toward the source of the voice, pushing against the encroaching shadows. The light around her brightened, strong enough to pierce the darkness that licked at her heels. "Together," she shouted, feeling the pulsating rhythm of love merging with her desperation. It flowed like electricity through her body, connecting with their spirits. But just as Jenna believed she could shatter their hold, the shadows surged back, a monstrous wave crashing over her once more. "You'll never escape us," they screeched, a cacophony of hatred and longing twisting into one horrible sound. The edges of her vision blurred with dark tendrils that wrapped around her. Jenna faltered, fear creeping in. What if she couldn't do it? Just when despair threatened to choke out her hope, a brilliant light burst through, illuminating the swirling nightmare. "Hold on." Ben's voice ripped through the darkness, firm and anchored. It cut through the chaos and reached the very core of her being. "Mom, stay with us." In that moment, she realized her love was a weapon, igniting her will to fight. But then, the shadows twisted, and a piercing scream reverberated around them. The light flickered, threatening to extinguish as a presence emerged from the depths of the darkness. "What are you willing to sacrifice, Jenna?" An otherworldly voice asked, smooth yet dripping with malice. Jenna's heart seized in terror. Was this the nightmare's true face? "Mom." Lily's voice called again, closer now, but echoed with fear. In a split second, the shadows lunged, forcing Jenna back. "What will you do?" The voice taunted, a gleeful challenge that stole her breath. Could she risk everything to save her children? Choose. The torment of the shadows peaked, the faces screaming for her to join them, offering the solace of despair. As the darkness closed in, Jenna felt her body tremble. Would she stand in the light, or let it go forever? The question hung heavy in the air, waiting for an answer that could decide everything. Jenna stood suspended in the thick darkness, the weight of her decision pressing heavily on her soul. The shadows whispered promises, their sibilant voices curling around her like tendrils of smoke. "What will it be, Jenna?" they chanted, a rhythmic mockery threading through her fear. She could feel their icy fingers caressing her mind, testing her resolve. But then came the echo of love, the resonant call of her children pulling her back from the brink. Fight! Ben's voice pierced through the layers of despair. We believe in you. It ignited her spirit, casting a flicker of defiance against the encroaching dark. In that moment, she remembered their laughter, the sweet scent of their heads against her shoulder as they drifted to sleep. Her heart surged with the power of every sleepless night spent keeping them safe. Every sacrifice she had made, this was her reason. With a deep breath, she gathered all she had. I choose my children, Jenna cried, her voice a fierce declaration that rang through the shadows like a bell of courage. She clutched her fist, imagining her love becoming a blazing shield. I won't let you take them. The darkness recoiled, hissing like steam escaping a boiling pot, but Jenna pressed forward, moving with the force of a tornado. The light surrounding her pulsed with each determined step, shoving the shadows back, illuminating the grotesque forms that lurked in the darkness. Their hideous faces began to melt away, twisted by her will. She locked onto the darkness swirling around her children, feeling their presence tugging at her, afraid and trapped. Mom! Help! It was Lily, her voice trembling but still true, a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. Jenna surged toward the shadows that held them captive, the flicker of light dancing in her vision, pulsing like a heartbeat. The figures of Ben and Lily began to clear from the mist, their outlines gaining vibrancy as she approached. Hold on tight, Jenna shouted, reaching forth, her fingers brushing against the tendrils of darkness that gripped her children. I'm here. I'm coming for you. She thrust her arm deep into the swirling shadows, feeling the chill seep into her skin. Let them go. The cold wrapped tighter, pulling her back in immense force, trying to rip her apart, but a blinding wave of warmth surged through her veins, igniting every nerve, warming her spirit. I'm stronger, she bellowed, and the light erupted from her core, engulfing the darkness surrounding them. The shadows shrieked in protest, contorting grotesquely as they lost purchase. Mom, please! Both Ben and Lily cried, terror giving way to urgency. Jenna felt the pull of their love and instinctively grasped their hands, fingers intertwining like roots anchoring a tree. With one final push, Jenna unleashed the strength of her heart. You will not take my family. A cataclysmic burst of light shattered the dark, a brilliant explosion that shoved the figures back from her. The shadows wailed, their forms splintering into dust, the whispers dissolving into the void, as their malevolence washed away. Then silence fell, an echoing absence of sound. Jenna staggered, taking a moment to breathe as the light began to settle. The kitchen returned to its familiar state, pristine and untouched as if nothing had transpired. Dust motes danced in the warmly lit air, reminding her of the mornings spent laughing over breakfast. Mom! Lily and Ben rushed to wrap their arms around her, their warmth flooding her with relief. Tears welled in Jenna's eyes as she cradled them close. You're safe. You're here. The weight that had pressed on her chest lifted with each heartbeat. They were alive. They were free. Standing there, enveloped in her children's embrace, warmth suffused her from the inside out. The danger receded into nothingness, the sense of loss hanging heavy in the air like a forgotten nightmare. She knew the shadows were still there, lurking in the peripheries of reality, but they no longer held power over her. Let us go to bed, she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks as she pulled her children tight. Together, the three of them moved toward the living room, filled with a newfound sense of safety. As she tucked them in, their soft breaths calming her heart, she knew they had faced darkness and emerged stronger. The legend of Mr. Thompson flickered away in her mind, irrelevant now that they were together, and she realized the true battle had always been a matter of love against despair. Jenna closed their bedroom door gently and leaned against it for a moment, breathing in the solidness of being home. The shadows might encroach again, but she was ready. For nothing was stronger than a mother's love. Now, this story comes to a close, but I have to multiply the heartbeats of this moment. If you enjoyed this thrilling journey, you need to subscribe now. Don't wait even one more second to share this with friends who need to experience this. Smash that like button now. It feeds the algorithm and keeps these exclusive stories coming. And flood the comments section with your reactions and theories. I'm excited to see what you all think. Only true fans understand the importance of showing your support. We're all in this together, so join the family and be part of every pulse of our story.